My name is Lauren Hayes. I am 32 years old. 11 months ago, my mother betrayed me by secretly telling my fiance that I was not ambitious enough for their circle. Now, in the hospital waiting room after my father's cardiac episode, my mother sneers that I am an embarrassment who will ruin Ryan's future, and the family deserves better than my ordinary life. The words cut deep, but I felt a surge of resolve. This was the moment I would prove her wrong and uncover the truth about her character, no matter the pain it would bring. If you have ever felt your own mother turn on you during a family crisis like this, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what happened to you. Your stories keep me going. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while we waited for news about my father. My mother had barely sat down before she started in on me, her voice low but sharp enough to slice through the quiet murmurs of the other families scattered around the room. She leaned closer, her eyes narrowing the way they always did when she was about to remind me exactly where I stood in her world. You know, Lauren Ryan's family has been asking questions about you again. She said the words dripping with that familiar mix of disappointment and calculation. They think someone with a real future would have stepped up by now instead of hiding behind some low level office job that barely pays the bills. My stomach tightened. I had been with Ryan Caldwell for 11 months, and for every single one of those months, I had kept my real life hidden from all of them. On paper, I was just an administrative assistant scraping by in a one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs outside Salt Lake City. In reality, I was a senior software architect at one of the biggest tech firms in the region, pulling in $48,000 a month before taxes with stock options that had already made my savings account look ridiculous. I had 3 patents pending and had spoken at 2 national conferences last year alone, but I never corrected them when they assumed I was struggling. My grandmother had left me a letter when she passed away when I was 26, and the line that stayed with me was simple: a person's true character only shows when they think you have nothing to offer. So I had decided to test them. I wore the cheap clothes, drove the old car, and smiled through every passive comment my mother made about how I needed to do better if I wanted to keep a man like Ryan. Ryan himself worked in marketing for a local real estate development company, and his family had connections that my mother and my older sister thought could open doors for the small chain of boutique fitness centers my family ran. They had been expanding too fast, taking on debt, and my mother had made it clear that a good match like Ryan was the answer. Jessica Morgan. His ex came from a family that owned half the commercial property in the valley, and my mother never let me forget how perfect she would have been. My father shifted in his plastic chair, looking exhausted from the tests they had run on him earlier. He had always been the quieter one, the one who tried to smooth things over, but this time he surprised me. When my mother opened her mouth to keep going, he cut her off with a sudden, frustrated burst. Enough! He snapped, his voice louder than I had heard in years. This is not the time or the place. Leave her alone. He stood up abruptly, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the waiting room without another word, the door swinging shut behind him with a heavy thud that left the rest of us staring. My mother pressed her lips together, clearly annoyed that he had interrupted her. She shot me one last look, then stood up and motioned for me to follow her into the hallway so we could speak privately. I did, my heart still hammering from her earlier words. We rounded the corner near the vending machines, and that is when I heard her voice again, this time talking to my aunt who had just arrived. They thought they were alone. We need to deal with this situation quickly, my mother said, her tone urgent and cold. Ryan cannot be allowed to make this mistake. Lauren is fine as a placeholder, but once the deal with Jessica's family goes through, we can find a way to end it. My aunt let out a low laugh. You really think he will go along with it? He seems attached to her. He is attached to the idea of her, my mother replied. But once he sees how much the fitness centers could gain from Jessica's family's property investments, he will come around. Lauren is too naive to suspect anything. She thinks we actually like her. The hallway seemed to tilt under my feet. This was not just snobbery. This was a calculated plan. I was the temporary distraction while they secured the business merger they needed to keep the family gems afloat. The debt had been mounting for 2 years, and the bank was starting to ask questions. I had suspected something from the late night calls and the tense dinners, but hearing it laid out so plainly made my blood run hot. I stepped back before they could see me, pressing myself against the wall. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from anger. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was grateful. They had no idea what I was capable of. I slipped back into the waiting room just as the doctor came out with an update on my father. He was stable, resting comfortably, and we could see him soon. My mother put on her concerned face for the doctor, all smiles and gratitude, but the second he left, she turned to me again. "You heard what I said earlier," she said quietly. "Think about it. For once in your life, think about what is best for the family instead of yourself." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Inside, my mind was racing. I could confront her right there. I could tell her exactly what I had overheard and walk out, but that would be too easy. They would twist it, call me dramatic, say I was overreacting because of the stress of the day. No. If I was going to respond, I would do it on my terms. I would play the role they expected a little longer. I would gather every piece of information I could, and then I would show them exactly who they had underestimated. Later that evening, after we had seen my father and the nurses told us to go home and rest, Ryan picked me up from the hospital. He looked worried, his hand gentle on my arm as we walked to the car. "Your mother called me earlier," he said softly. "She said things got tense. I am sorry." I smiled the way I always did, the modest, grateful smile I had perfected over the past 11 months. "It is fine," I told him. "She is just stressed about your dad." Inside, I filed away the fact that my mother had already called him. She was moving fast. The next morning, I started my research the way I did every big project at work. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, the one I kept hidden in a plain case so no one would ask questions about why an administrative assistant had such expensive equipment. I dug into the financial records of the family fitness centers, public filings, social media posts from my older sister, who loved to post about their exclusive new locations. The numbers did not lie. The business was in deeper trouble than I had realized, with loans coming due in 4 months and the bank already threatening to call them in. The partnership with Jessica's family was not a nice to have. It was survival. I also found something else. My aunt had been moving money around in ways that did not add up, small amounts at first, but adding up to $300,000 funneled into her personal accounts under the guise of marketing expenses. I printed everything, saved screenshots, and started making quiet calls to my coworker, Emma Thompson, the one person at the office who knew my real salary and had always had my back. "This is big," she said when I explained what I needed. "Be careful, Lauren. Families like this do not go down without a fight." 2 weeks later, Ryan proposed. We were at a quiet dinner at his apartment, nothing fancy. And when he got down on one knee with the simple ring I knew my mother had helped pick out, I said yes. I let the happy tears come because they were real, in a way. Real anger, real determination. My mother called the next day, her voice dripping with false warmth. "This is wonderful news," she said. "We will plan the engagement party at the house in 3 weeks. Make sure you wear something appropriate. We have important people coming." I agreed, keeping my voice light. The game was on. I had 3 weeks to turn everything I had learned into the kind of evidence that could not be ignored. My mother thought she was in control. She had no idea I was about to flip the entire script. But as I hung up the phone, a new text came through from an unknown number. It was a single line that made my stomach drop. "I know what you are planning. Stop now, or everyone will know your little secret first." The unknown number text left me staring at my phone in the dim light of my kitchen, my thumb hovering over the delete button while my mind spun through every possible person who could have sent it. My mother had just hung up after gushing about the engagement, but this message felt like a warning shot from someone inside the circle. I did not reply. Instead, I blocked the number and told myself it was probably a wrong text or one of my aunt's dramatic friends trying to stir trouble. Still, the words burned in my head as I went to bed that night. The next morning, I drove to work in my usual old sedan, the one that screamed administrative assistant to anyone watching, and spent the first hour at my desk pretending to schedule meetings while I quietly pulled more files on the family fitness centers. Emma slid into the chair beside me during our lunch break with 2 coffees and a knowing look. "You look like you did not sleep," she said, keeping her voice low so the open office did not overhear. "Anything new on the research front?" I filled her in on the threatening texts and the deeper numbers I had found overnight. The fitness centers were carrying almost $2 million in debt that my mother and my older sister had hidden behind optimistic social media posts about new locations opening soon. Emma whistled softly. "That is not pocket change. I want me to run a deeper background on your aunt. I know a guy in accounting who owes me a favor." I nodded, grateful, and we made a quick plan to meet after work to go over what she found. That evening, my mother called while I was still at my desk packing up. Her voice came through the speaker, sharp and immediate, the way it always did when she had decided it was time to remind me of my place. "Lauren, we need to talk about the engagement party," she said, without any hello. "Your father is still recovering, and the last thing he needs is more stress from your little attitude at the hospital. I expect you to show up in something simple and appropriate, not whatever cheap thing you usually wear. Ryan's family will be there, and we cannot have you embarrassing us again." The words hit like a slap, delivered with that cold sarcasm she reserved for moments when she thought no one else was listening. She went on before I could answer. "Jessica stopped by the house today, and she looked perfect. Her family's property deals could save the centers in one signature. You should be thanking me for keeping your little placeholder role alive this long." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. This was my mother initiating the attack again, openly comparing me to Ryan's ex right after I had said yes to his proposal. Before I could respond, my father's voice cut in from the background on speakerphone. "Let it go for one night," he said, but his tone was quieter, almost resigned, and then he added something that stunned me. "Lauren knows what she needs to do to keep this family together. She has always been the practical one." It was not support. It was a quiet, frustrating push that made it sound like he agreed I was second best and always would be. My mother laughed, lightly satisfied, and told me to be at the house the following weekend for planning. The call ended with her usual click, leaving me sitting in my car in the parking garage, wondering how my father could sound so reasonable while still choosing her side. The weekend planning meeting at my parents' house in the quiet Salt Lake City suburb felt like walking into a trap I had set for myself. My cousin had driven in from Denver to help with decorations because my mother had roped her in with promises of free gym memberships for her kids. She greeted me with a warm hug at the door. "You look tired, cousin," she whispered. "Everything okay with Ryan?" I nodded and forced a smile, but inside I was filing away every detail. My mother took charge the moment we sat down at the dining table, spreading out sample invitations and vendor lists like she was directing a corporate takeover. "Lauren, you will handle the seating chart," she announced, her eyes flicking to me with that familiar contempt. "Make sure Jessica sits near Ryan's parents. We need to keep those connections warm." My older sister smirked from across the table. "Yeah, and try not to look too out of place this time. Last hospital visit was awkward enough for everyone." My mother leaned in, then initiating the next jab with perfect timing. "Exactly. I have been telling your father for months that you need to step up or step aside. Ryan deserves someone who understands our world, not someone who still drives that rust bucket and works a dead-end job." The words were laced with the long-held resentment I had always felt from her, the deep dislike that made her see me as the daughter who never quite measured up. My father sat at the head of the table flipping through a brochure, and this time his reaction was different again. He set the brochure down slowly, looked straight at my mother, and said in a low voice that carried across the room, "If you keep pushing like this, you are going to lose her completely one day." And then, where will the centers be? It sounded like he was defending me for a split second. But the way his eyes met mine afterward held a shocking, quiet warning, like he knew more about my hidden life than he let on and was choosing not to blow my cover yet. The mixed message left me off balance, frustrated in a whole new way. After the meeting, my aunt pulled me aside in the hallway near the back door, her perfume thick and her smile too sweet. "You heard your mother," she said softly. "This is bigger than your feelings. The centers need this merger, or we all lose everything we built." I nodded again, playing the part. But later that night, Emma sent me an encrypted file with the proof I had been waiting for. My aunt had been siphoning almost $300,000 over the last 2 years into a private account labeled as consulting fees. The paper trail was clean and undeniable. I saved it all and added it to the growing folder on my laptop. 2 days later, another anonymous text arrived while I was at the grocery store picking up dinner. "Last warning. Drop the research or your real salary becomes front page news for Ryan's family." My hands shook as I read it in the produce aisle. Who was sending these? My mother, my aunt, or someone closer like my cousin who might have overheard too much. I deleted it and kept shopping, but the threat hung over me like a storm cloud. I met with a new contact that week, a sharp-eyed family accountant named David Klein, who Emma had introduced me to in secret. David was in his late 40s and had worked with several local businesses, including the fitness centers, years ago. "I can verify the embezzlement numbers for you," he told me over coffee at a quiet cafe downtown. "But once this goes public, it will not just be your mother's business that crumbles, your whole family name takes the hit." I thanked him and left with even more documentation on my resolve hardening. The engagement party was now only 5 days away, and my mother called again to finalize details. This time, her voice was ice cold from the first word. "Lauren, Ryan told me you have been asking questions about the center's finances. If you ruin this for us, I will make sure everyone knows exactly how ungrateful you are. You owe this family more than you will ever understand." She hung up before I could answer, leaving the threat dangling. My father texted me separately. An hour later, another very and frustrating move. "Your mother is scared. Do what you need to do, but remember, we are still family." The words felt like a final push toward the painful choice I knew was coming. I was no longer sure I could walk away with everything intact. That night, Ryan stopped by my apartment unannounced, his face tense under the hallway light. "My mom heard some rumor about you having more money than you let on," he said quietly. "Is there something you are not telling me?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with yet another unknown number text. This one had a photo attached, a screenshot of my company payroll record with my real salary highlighted in bold. The message read, "Party starts in 5 days. Your move." I stared at the screen while Ryan waited for my reply, the weight of every secret and every jab from my mother pressing down until it felt like the walls were closing in. I stared at the screen while Ryan waited for my reply, the photo of my real payroll record glowing like evidence in a trial I had not meant to start yet. My hands went cold. The message was clear: someone close had sold me out, and the engagement party was 5 days away. Ryan leaned in, his brow furrowed. "Lauren, what is it? You look like you just saw a ghost." I slipped the phone into my pocket fast, forcing a shaky smile. "Nothing important, just work spam." He did not look convinced, but he let it drop and pulled me into a hug that felt more like a cage than comfort. Inside my head, my mother's voice echoed from every call she had made, initiating each fresh jab with that same cold sarcasm. She thought she owned the narrative. I was about to find out how wrong she was. The next 4 days blurred into a storm of quiet preparation and rising dread. Emma met me at a coffee shop on the edge of town the following morning, sliding a thick envelope across the table. David verified everything she said, keeping her voice low. The embezzlement trail from your aunt is ironclad, but I also traced the anonymous texts. They came from a burner linked to your cousin's old phone. She has been feeding your mother details for weeks. The betrayal stung sharper than anything my mother had said. My cousin, the one I had trusted with small talk at the planning meeting, had been my mother's spy all along. I thanked Emma and drove home, with the folder burning a hole in my bag every mile, feeling like another step toward a cliff I could not see the bottom of. My mother called that same afternoon, her voice slicing through the speaker the moment I answered. "Lauren, I heard you have been poking around the center's books again," she said without greeting, the words laced with long-held resentment that made my chest tighten. "If you think your little secret research will save you, you are even more naive than I thought. Ryan deserves better than a daughter who hides behind a dead-end job and drags the family name down. Show up at the party in something decent or do not show up at all." She hung up before I could respond, leaving the threat hanging like smoke. Later that evening, my father texted me separately, another frustrating and shocking shift in his pattern. "Your mother is protecting what we built. I have always known about your tech work, Lauren. I chose not to say anything because the family business comes first. Do not make me regret that." The admission hit like a punch. He had known my real salary, my patents, everything, and had still let my mother treat me like the family embarrassment. The mixed message left me reeling, angry in a way I had never felt before. The night of the engagement party arrived under a clear Utah sky. My parents' suburban house had been transformed with string lights and rented tables, the kind of modest setup that screamed "we are respectable" to the local business crowd. Ryan's family mingled near the backyard grill while my older sister played hostess, laughing too loud at every joke. I arrived in my usual simple dress, the old car parked out front like a badge of the persona I had worn for 11 months. My mother spotted me immediately and initiated the first public attack with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "There she is," she announced to the small group around her, including Jessica and her parents. "Our future daughter-in-law, the one who still works that basic office job. We all know she is lucky to have Ryan, do not we?" The words landed with cutting sarcasm, exposing the deep dislike she had nursed for years. Heads turned. Whispers started. My aunt hovered nearby, her face tight. My cousin avoided my eyes, the traitor who had leaked the payroll photo. I waited until the toast began, then stepped forward. When my mother handed me the microphone with that same frozen expectation, "Thank you all for coming," I started my voice steady, even though my pulse hammered. I laid it out calmly at first, the overheard hospital conversation, the placeholder, playing the $2 million in hidden debt on the fitness centers. Gasp rippled through the crowd. I pulled the folder from my bag and held up the embezzlement proof. "My aunt has been taking almost $300,000 over the last 2 years, I said. My mother's face went pale, but she recovered fast, initiating her counter with venom. "This is ridiculous." She snapped into the microphone she grabbed back. "Lauren is making this up because she knows she is not good enough for this family. She has been lying to all of us about who she really is." Before I could respond, my cousin stepped forward on cue phone in hand. "Actually," she said, her voice trembling, but determined, "I have proof Lauren has been the one manipulating everyone. She hid her real 6-figure tech salary the entire time." She flashed the leaked payroll screenshot on the large screen someone had set up for photos. The crowd murmured louder. Ryan's face shifted from shock to something colder. My mother seized the moment, her sarcasm turning triumphant. "See, she played us all. Ryan, you deserve someone honest like Jessica." My father stood then, and his reaction this time was the most shocking yet. He walked to my mother's side, placed a hand on her shoulder, and looked straight at me with calm calculation. "Your mother is right," he said, quietly but clearly. "We have to protect the business. Lauren, if this is how you repay us after everything, maybe it is time you stepped back." The words landed like a final door slamming shut. He had known my secret and chosen her side anyway, the ultimate frustrating betrayal. Ryan pulled me aside near the fence a few minutes later, his grip tight on my arm. "Is it true?" he asked. "The salary, the hiding?" I nodded, too exhausted to lie anymore. He shook his head, regret and anger mixing in his eyes. "My family is pulling out of any deal if this mess continues. I cannot be with someone who would tear my future apart like this." He walked away toward Jessica without another word. The party dissolved into awkward goodbyes and sideways glances. My mother watched from the patio, her posture straight and victorious, the business merger still on track, because Ryan's parents saw me as the unstable one. The evidence I had gathered sat useless in my hands. David had warned me it would not be enough if the family closed ranks, and he had been right. I drove home that night in my old car, the folder on the passenger seat feeling heavier than lead. The next morning, my mother sent one final text. "The centers are safe. Ryan and Jessica are talking again. Do not contact us until you learn your place." I deleted it, then blocked her number. My father called once, leaving a voicemail with that same quiet calculation. This was always going to happen, Lord. Family first. I did not call back. Emma offered me a shoulder at work, but the damage was done. Word of the leaked salary had spread through industry contacts, and my boss pulled me into a meeting 2 days later to ask if I had been moonlighting or hiding conflicts. I explained, but the trust was cracked. I kept my job, but the promotion I had been promised quietly didn't. In the end, I made the painful choice to walk away completely. No dramatic revenge, no public takedown that stuck. I let the family keep their centers, let Ryan go back to Jessica, and let my mother win the round she had orchestrated for years. The cost was everything I had tried to protect: the relationship, the fragile family ties, and a piece of my own reputation. I sat in my small apartment the following weekend, staring at the city lights through the window, feeling the heavy loneliness settle in my chest like something permanent. My grandmother's letter still sat in the drawer, the lesson about character still true, but living it had left me more isolated than I ever imagined. My mother remained untouched, still running the field with her head held high. I had uncovered her true self, but the victory belonged to her. I chose myself, and the only way left was refusing to play the game anymore, even if it meant losing the people I had raised and hoped would love me for who I really was. The regret lingers some nights, but so does the quiet knowledge that I finally saw the truth. And that truth set me free, even if the dream was over. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to make a painful choice that cost you family and left you wondering if it was worth it, drop a comment below and tell me what you decided. Your stories remind me I'm not alone in this.